I'm gonna ring our bell here. All right, good afternoon and welcome to this February 26th meeting of the Rotary Club of Brentwood. I am Keely Hall and I am honored to serve as your club president this year. Sana Robinson this morning has our invocation, and that will be followed by Lena Sugis with the pledge and four-way test. Sana, take it away.
Thank you, Keely. If you'll please pray with me. Our Creator God, we thank you for the opportunity to gather today in this digital space in these difficult times of uncertainty and isolation and loss. Our flags are at half staff today for the 500,000 souls who have succumbed to this cruel pandemic. Yet we remain hopeful for the vaccine that has brought us hope for health, hope for normalcy, and hope for freedom. Please continue to protect our world and our nation's leaders, our government at all levels, our healthcare workers, particularly the National Guard who have always stepped up when needed, our military, and all who are helping us out of this dark season into a wellspring of healing and warmth. Keep in your loving care all who are ill and suffering and who have lost loved ones, jobs, and so much quality of life. Be particularly with Cliff Koss in surgery today and with our club as we resume meetings in person next month. Keep us safe so that we can continue to serve. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. If you would, please face the flag and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now the four-way test of the things we think, say, or do. First, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build goodwill and better friendships? And fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned?
All right, and now Club Secretary Jane Covington is going to introduce any guests or visiting Rotarians we have today.
Well, I cannot see any guests unless I'm missing something on Zoom here, but it looks like our speaker may have one family member joining by Zoom. And other than that, I see some phone numbers. Of course, I don't know whose phone number it is, but I'm not seeing any other guests.
Well,
Please.
I'm with you. I don't know that we have any, but I thought you might know of some phone numbers. If there's any phone number guest that's joining us, let us know. Otherwise, we'll move on.
I mean, I'm Zach Benner. I'm a guest that I've been regularly, but I have my application submitted. So hopefully I can become officially a member soon.
All right.
Absolutely. And your application is in process as of today. So
Awesome. Awesome.
looking forward to having you as a real member, Zach.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Looking forward to it.
All right. Let's move forward. Let's do Happy Bucks. And in the process of doing Happy Bucks, if we have missed a guest or visiting Rotarian, y'all can speak up and let us know you're here. But otherwise, who is happy today?
This is Jason. I'm happy.
What are you happy about?
My 6th grade son started back Metro in person today. He was out of in-person school for 351 days.
Man.
So,
Woo!
Hallelujah.
my wife's even more happy because she's the one that's been home with him. So my younger son started back 2 weeks ago and then got shut down for snow. So he's been back this week too. So double happy. Both of them are in for the first time in a year.
Yeah, that's definitely praiseworthy. All right, who else?
I'm happy to report that I have now successfully completed 2 vaccination shots through the VA, thanks to them, courtesy of them. Have minor, if no repercussions. So good.
Good.
Great. I'm happy.
Good. That's the
I'm I'm happy because there's this sense of hope that this thing is almost over with. Most of my clients are either older or physicians or nurses. So the people that I talk to, it seems like 60-70% of everybody has been vaccinated, which obviously is not true. But 60 or 70% of the people that I talk to are sort of post pandemic already. And it just gives me hope that soon we'll all be there. This nightmare will be over, and we'll get back to it. There's like a weight lifting off of everyone's shoulder right now. We're not there yet, but we're getting there.
And Keely, I'm happy.
Yes, sir. What are you happy about, Jake?
Last night when I got home, I learned that my son had received a phone call that we've been hoping for quite a while. And it was from U.S. Congressman Mark Green, letting him know that he has received a nomination, an appointment to the United States Air Force Academy.
Wow. Wow.
Pretty proud papa. He's
That
worked really
Air
hard for
Force
it.
Academy is the real deal. That is maybe the toughest ticket in town, isn't it?
Yes. Well, there might be those on on our Zoom that might disagree, but it was a tough charge for him. And gosh, he worked so hard. I'm very proud of the work that he put in to get there. So
Great.
Awesome.
That's outstanding. I love that. Who else? Well, that's a pretty happy note to end on. It's tough to top that, especially from a parent who's got a child who's not going to a free education institution. So congratulations to Jay. Let's move forward. Biggest thing on my announcement docket today is to just make sure to reiterate that we are, as Charles alluded to, we are seeing some light at the end of the tunnel. There's still a tunnel. We're still progressing through the tunnel, but there is light at the end of it. Vaccinations are going up and cases are going down, and therefore we are going to go back to our hybrid format at the Spring Hill Suites. Martin Center is still not open, not going to be for a while. So, but the Spring Hill Suites has graciously allowed us to come back in on Fridays, and we'll have our hybrid meeting there. So we'll have 2025 in person, probably socially distant, masked, all that stuff. And then anybody else who is wanting to may join via Zoom. So we'll have Zoom and in person. We'll do that for the month of March for sure. Looks like we might actually get them to agree to have us during the month of April also. So those things are looking up. But between now and then, we do have 2 more meetings, this one and one more that are Zoom only. So don't sleep on that. Join us via Zoom until March the 12th when we go back to hybrid. And then, of course, you can still join by Zoom or you can show up in person. Stay tuned for more information on that. Reminder again that we have postponed Pancake Day indefinitely. We're going to look into the feasibility of doing it later on in the year, though clock is ticking on that, and that could be tough. Things are looking better. I don't know that they're looking that much better. We'll see what some of the powers that be have to say about that in terms of finding a host site, finding allowability to have an event like that. That could be a tall order, but we'll see. We will, for time reasons, I do want to read some of those letters that we've gotten from some of our recipients of our grants from the last year. For today, we're going to skip that for the moment. If we have time at the end, I may read one then, but I do want to go ahead and get to our program. Our speaker today will actually be introduced by her husband, who is also a first-time guest. I don't know if we've ever had that situation before. So, first time for everything. So I will now turn the microphone over to our guest introducer, Ross Hammond. Ross, are you on, and are you able to speak to introduce your wife? Ross, are you there?
I'm Ross Hammond. I'm Monique's husband, and we have our phone as well. You're going to turn your speaker up because our internet has been going in and out today. So Anyway, I'm an electrical engineer and Monique is a pharmacist, and we actually met at the University of Minnesota back some years ago, more than I want to count. But anyway, I was Rotarian for a number of years, and unfortunately our club in Minneapolis folded. And then we went to Australia, and I was Rotarian there. And Monique was a Rotarian, because in Queensland, which is, well, let's just say they're very traditional. There was only one club in the city where we were, with 5 clubs that really allowed women. So, but in our club, which was the big club in the city of Gladstone on the coast, the Rotarians actually ran the meeting. So we do a lot of events, and the women were telling the men what to do. So Monique was very active. Any case, people would ask us, well, how did an engineer and a pharmacist get into hearing loss? Well, what happened, and Monique will explain, but we went with my mother to a church fundraiser about 15 years ago. And we walked into the hall next to the sanctuary, and it was so loud. They had a Greek folk band with brand new speakers, and they were all excited about it. But it was so loud, little kids were holding their ears. So that's a sign when you know it's way too loud. So we went in and sat down. Monique sat with the band to her left side. And the next day, as she will explain, she went deaf in her left ear. So she had to quit her job at the University of Minnesota Hospital. And then she did research and wrote the book that she will talk about. And that's how we got into this. And then she started talking to groups, and she's now talked to 160 Rotary clubs, over 100 of those in person, and now about 60 in Zoom, and about 165 other groups. So she's done a lot of work on trying to prevent noise-induced hearing loss. So with that, Monique.
Here, I give you your telephone number.
Okay, thanks.
Well, thank you so very much. Ross, you have to get me the thing up here.
Sorry, we have
Ross is
more things to do here.
Ross is my techie. So anyway, so I thank you so very much for the invitation today, and for having me Zoom with you on hearing loss, an issue that so upset my life. And so today we will talk about hearing loss in the context of it being a silent epidemic. And so we'll be talking about the hearing loss that we obtain rather than that we are born with, you know, which is a totally different story. However, this hearing loss in general terms is already recognized also as a serious public health issue worldwide. And so I like to say that there is so much more to hearing loss than not hearing very well. And I found that out really fast. And so hearing loss changes lives, you know, and not necessarily for the best. And so, yes, as Ross just told you, I was a hospital pharmacist. And then one day I went suddenly deaf in my left ear in a matter of 4 hours. So this does not always happen nicely over a lifetime. This can actually go very fast. It can even go faster than that. And so, according to my physicians, a very loud sound exposure that I had the day before at that church fundraiser that was just mentioned really contributed to my problems, because they said that no matter what might have been going on in that ear already, what do we know? Some pre-existing condition, maybe some virus, yeah. You know, they said that that noise insult, as they called it, simply put me over the top. It overloaded and caved the system. And so I knew that my job was on the line, because in my profession, I have to hear accurately, and any guesses and misunderstandings can lead to people getting hurt. And it also can get you majorly sued. And so there went the job. Then I also had to find out that as I gradually came to the realization that I needed a plan B for my life, I found out that I had a lot to learn, because I was like most people, basically clueless as to how this was going to be affecting me and my life and what actually had happened. But as I began to learn, all of a sudden, the pieces of the puzzle gradually fell into place. And I started to see the whole picture. And so I like to say that education actually set me free. And so my message to you is one today of education, yes, definitely one of prevention, and also one of serious empowerment, not only for ourselves, but also for our families, our children, grandchildren, and for the communities that we serve. Because I got myself a new mission for my life, and that is to keep people of all ages hearing better and longer. And so that gets me out into the communities, and it also gets me actually into the industry, where I love doing safety presentations like I do on the picture down below for people who actually work in loud environments. Because of that, are very much at risk for hearing loss and for a change of life, and sometimes also, like it happened to me, maybe even forfeiting jobs. So anyway, so why do we call hearing loss a silent epidemic? Well, hearing loss in general terms is the result of silent and invisible injury throughout the hearing systems. And if that gets bad enough, it can lead actually to disability. And so hearing loss is then also known as the silent disability. And so, unfortunately, this is not only for old folks anymore. The numbers of those with hearing loss are up in every single age sector worldwide. And so by now, Johns Hopkins Medicine tells us that 1 in 5 Americans, age 12, think about that, age 12, school-aged kids, you know, age 12 and over has hearing loss significant enough to interfere with daily communication. And so hearing loss is first and foremost a communication issue at any age. And what people are struggling the most with is actually the understanding of speech in the least amount of background sound. And so now think about that 12-year-old who sits already in a schoolroom, a virtual schoolroom, a noisy schoolroom, and already they are struggling with the details of what is being said to them. What does that do for their education and then also for their future? We have to become aware, and we have to really start keying in on that and sort of run interference for at least for our children and grandchildren. And so quality of life, yes, hearing loss becomes immediately a quality of life at any issue, as I found out. And so people having that communication problem are affected socially and emotionally. And so they tend to come to our hearing support group meetings here in Minneapolis. And they tell us that they always feel on the outsides of conversations and of activities, sort of on the periphery, even with people that they have known for a long time. Yes, family and friends, but also their people at work. And so this affects every phase of our lives. And of course, that leads to depression. And people then tend to isolate themselves further and further. And so hearing loss is also known as an isolation disorder for many. And now with COVID-19 that we have to isolate and quarantine and do all of those things, we all have come to recognize how toxic to the psyche actually isolation is. And so this is a good time for us to become a little bit more empathetic towards those amongst us who have hearing loss and who do this because they simply want to avoid, you know, other noxious kind of events. Now, you can also imagine that with wearing masks and socially distancing, that a very important communication tool for those with hearing loss is basically being knocked out. And that is the very famous lip reading, as we call it, which is actually called speech reading. And so now we can all of a sudden not see anymore the facial expressions and the lips moving, so that we can sort of coordinate what we are seeing and what we seem to be hearing and understanding, whether that all kind of gels and makes sense. So that is all gone. Now, I know that there are many Rotary clubs who are very active, and thankfully so, in their communities of distributing masks. And so by now that I have done this for a while, everybody has by now known about the clear window or the clear panel masks, where actually the mouth or the lips are exposed. And now even the Ford Motor Company is getting into this. It all of a sudden is a big deal, right? Because they are now making some masks also and getting a patent, I believe I read in the paper, for a fog-free mask, because you can imagine if you're covering your whole face with vinyl or with plastic, that you're starting to fog up. All masks, muffled sound, and this one does too, but at least it gives people a little bit of a fighting chance when they have to go for an important meeting, like with a lawyer or a doctor, or even having a socially distant lunch with somebody, maybe, to have at least a fighting chance of understanding or of putting things together. I am not being paid for telling anybody this. This, guys, is simply show and tell and raising awareness. So anyway, of course, I found also out that hearing loss affects people professionally and financially very fast. And in my case, I took major hits on both sides, and I do not wish it on anyone. But now Johns Hopkins research is also making the ties between hearing loss and dementia, and who wants to go there? And so these are all motivators for us to protect the hearing that we have today so that we can still hear tomorrow, and to prevent hearing loss in any which way that we possibly can do that. Now, there are many reasons why people can have hearing loss, and they run the gamut, literally from earwax plugs to brain tumors. And so for this kind of a slide, I try to organize things a little bit more alphabetically. And when I do that, then aging comes out on top. Yes, aging, because aging is still worldwide the leading cause of hearing loss, because the boomers are still aging, and then also we are living so much longer. The second reason worldwide for hearing loss is excessively loud sound, my pet peeve, as you might be imagining. And so excessive noise, and our world seems to be getting noisier by the day, and with that we also become increasingly reckless with our sound exposures. And so excessively loud sound leads to something that is, aptly called noise-induced hearing loss. And noise-induced hearing loss is the same kind of damage in the same places as hearing loss of aging. People always freak out about that. But this is a premature and an accelerated aging of the ears. And who wants to have that? And of all of the reasons, of why people can have hearing loss, there is not so much that I can do about anything. Maybe I can work with an earwax plug or with an infection or whatever. But when it comes to how loud my life is, then all of a sudden, I kind of start to realize that I actually have a lot of power over the sound volume. And so a doctor told me one time, this is totally preventable. And as the world is becoming louder, people have to get into the belief and into the awareness that every day this becomes more and more a matter of choice. And so what choices do we have? Well, we can choose not to go to insanely loud places, like the insanely loud, maybe gyms even. Our daily life is just so tremendously, blown apart by all of these sound volumes. And even, church services. Oh, my goodness. And then, of course, the sports part. I mean, we can choose not to go there. If we do go, we can choose to protect ourselves with hearing protection the way we would be doing at work. But most people never even take the time to look on the back of the package of earplugs, how the manufacturer says that we should be installing those so that they actually stay in the ears and don't immediately fall out. And then also we have that thing that is called a volume control. And instead of continuously clicking up, we have to get in the thing that we are clicking down, especially on our already so insanely loud, entertainment centers, what I should call them, in our own homes. And so for us then, it becomes down to it again, to get that awareness, to teach our children and to lead by example. And so I think it's very important that people get a little bit of an understanding of what actually is happening here, why this is so toxic. And so this is a very simple diagram that I actually made for a book that I wrote about all of this, where I share my story and all of the information and the details on ears and hearing loss that I didn't have when they could have been so terribly helpful. And so when it comes to hearing loss of aging and noise-induced hearing loss, the damage is in exactly the same places. And so we're going to be looking at the inner ear and then also at what we call the hearing nerve. Now on this diagram, for this type of hearing loss, this is a larger structure, and you see the loop-de-loops up on top. We are not going to talk about those because they are for balance and equilibrium. We are going to concentrate on that snail-shaped organ on the bottom, which is actually the hearing organ of the inner ear. And then we're also going to be talking a little bit about the hearing nerve, which is nothing but an electrical cord, really tying the whole thing to the brain. So this inner ear hearing organ is actually called the cochlea. And cochlea in Latin simply means snail. And so I think that there is no reason to doubt why it was called that. Now, in real life, this cochlea is about the size of a pea, like in peas and carrots. Yes, everything here is very small and very fragile and not built to sustain the abuse that we actually submitted to. And so we have two cochleas, one for each ear. And so in each cochlea, we have some 20,000 or so very finely tuned and very fragile hearing cells, and that is all we get for a lifetime. From the time that we're born to the time that we may be dying at 105. And if you really think about that, that's not that many of those hearing cells. But when those hearing cells become weakened and they die on us, then that is the way they remain. Because in mammals, in humans, they do not rejuvenate themselves spontaneously the way they do in birds and fish. And so, of course, we have research going on. And so a researcher told me, oh, yes, he says, I can actually grow these hearing cells. I have lab rats who have nothing but new cells in their ears and not one of them works. And so that tells us that in this expensive and extensive research, there are glitches and hiccups, and it's going to be a while before we become the beneficiaries of all of those miracles that we might be expecting. However, it is these 20,000 or so very finely tuned hearing cells that are now going to be translating the sound energy that has traveled their way, traveled through the ear, finally arrived at the cochlea. And so now those cells are going to be translating that energy into electrical signals and going from one type of energy to a different type of energy. That tells us that the ear is what we call in physics a transducer, courtesy by Mother Nature. This is extremely difficult to do, but that is one of the issues that we are really messing with when we are going and we are abusing our ears with all of those high pressure sounds. And so anyway, so these signals that are generated in the cochlea, they will now travel to the brain, to the hearing portion of the brain, and they travel there by means of the cochlear nerve, the hearing nerve that gets those signals up there. And it is in the hearing portion of the brain that these signals will then be analyzed and given meaning to. They are decoded, if you will. And so in so many ways, we actually hear with our brain. And so people are saying to me, well, I can understand that as I'm aging and everything is sagging out on me, that these hearing cells might also be getting, taking a beating. But how come that sound is so toxic? And for that, we have to remember that a sound wave is a pressure wave. And it is that pressure that is giving sound its volume, its oomph. And it is also that sound pressure that becomes so toxic. And so with every single repeated and prolonged exposure to excessively loud sound, these hearing cells are beaten down over and over until they bend and they slip, and many of them might not come back to their previous level of functioning. And so all of a sudden one day we might be waking up and all of a sudden life has changed. We might be having symptoms of hearing loss. As a guy said in the presentation, life has lost its treble. Everything is dull, sound, speech, music. And so we have gone from healthy hearing cells like what they are standing up here on the top. We have gone down, bam, 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 until all of a sudden we might be having a severe situation going on in our ears. And that's about what I have in my ear. And believe me, it is not very helpful. And so this is why the doctor and the audiologist immediately told me, well, Monique, you have to kind of manage your expectations for hearing help, because although our hearing aids are now so good and they can work with all of those frequencies that we have lost and damaged, when it gets to be too bad, we have limits here. Because the hearing aids, even though they are digital, they have now Bluetooth connectivity. Oh my goodness, pretty soon they're going to be turning on your coffee maker in the morning. They are so complicated. But they are simply aids. They help us make the most of the hearing that we have. And so this is another motivator not to go and cause any more damage, but to quit it with the nonsense, with the noise, like about right now in this minute. And so people might all of a sudden not understand speech and noise anymore, but there is another thing that many people who have hearing damage and already hearing loss complain about, and that is tinnitus or tinnitus. Oh yeah, that infamous buzzing and ringing and hissing in the ears. And no matter how you pronounce it, tinnitus or tinnitus, it doesn't matter. It is always a drag, but it is also a red flag that something is not going right anymore with our hearing structures. And so no matter what, we always should find out why we might be having that buzzing or that ringing in our ears or in our heads, because there are different types and different reasons for it. But in over 90% of the cases, tinnitus or tinnitus is already due to hearing damage and already oftentimes to hearing loss. Because what we are listening to does not come from the ear itself. It comes from the brain. And so we have already kicked up that damage a notch or two. And so when we're coming out of the insanely loud venue, and we have buzzing and ringing in the ears together with feelings of dullness and fullness, then we got that shot across the bow by Mother Nature. And it is time to heed the message, because she is talking to us. And so if we do not read the message and we do not heed it, then all of a sudden, what was at one point in time sort of temporary, and then it settled itself down, given a little peace and quiet, all of a sudden, with every single repeated exposure, this becomes stronger and stronger. And all of a sudden, you're like me, 24/7 do I listen to a wall of noise, hissing and buzzing and cranking itself up and down. And not 1 second of peace have I had ever since the morning after I had that hearing disaster. And so it's best not to go there, because I tell you, the buzzing and the ringing is is oftentimes getting people much more depressed and much more annoyed than the hearing loss that is actually maybe underlying it. Because not only do we actually damage ourselves, we also damage the nerve, because those loud pressure, those sound waves are carrying through, and now all of a sudden they start to attack the very actually weak connection between the hearing cell and the hearing nerve. And pretty soon, bing, 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 we are also disconnecting ourselves from the nerve. And so now we have nerve damage, we have cell damage. And so all of a sudden it becomes clear that those signals that are traveling from the cochlea to the brain, that they become weak and unclear, and speech literally turns every day more and more into gibberish. And so yes, noise-induced hearing loss right now is permanent. Remember, we are doing research. It is also cumulative. We are piling on the damage day after day, but it is preventable. And this is why we are talking about it. This is why we are Zooming about it. And so we have to understand that for our poor, abused, unprotected ears, excessively loud sound is never entertaining, fun, or useful, or even much. Or what are we thinking of? You know, the way that we are deluding ourselves can be sometimes amazing. And so that is never the way it works. And the only thing that happens is that we are damaging our good hearing, and with that we also undermine a good portion of our quality of life, and all prematurely and in an accelerated fashion. And so when I'm saying all of this, I think there is another toxic myth and a falsehood that has to die right now, today, in this minute. And this is one that I hear a lot in the industry, and that is that the ears, the unprotected ears, oh help me, that they are actually becoming ever resistant to loud sound, immune to loud sound, tolerant to loud sound. No, 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 they do not become any such thing. The only thing that unprotected, abused ears can't become to excessively loud sound is the deafer to it. Deafer and deafer and deafer. Until pretty soon not much bothers us anymore, but life is also not so much fun anymore. And so people say, I'd love to protect myself, but how loud actually is it? And so here is a good rule. If you go someplace and it is so loud, the background noise is so loud that you have to yell and scream over it to be heard. I don't even talk about being understood. And here I'm thinking again of the loud bars and of the, also the loud holiday parties that we used to have. Oh my, you stand that's away from 3 to 5 feet from somebody and you have to scream your lungs out. That is industrial strength noise, and you are in a terrible situation. Screaming over noise is dangerous. Get out of there, take action, use hearing protection, get away from the sound source, do something, because it is dangerous. And then for our use, at home, we can also have our sound meter apps that we can download for our smartphones, but the app has to be matched to the phone. Otherwise, we are getting wrong readings. So if you have an iPhone, you want to have an i-compatible app. If you have a Droid, you want to have a Droid-compatible app. People also ask about the MP3 players that are out there and that are being still so abused. And manufacturers never tell us anything about how loud they can be, and some of them can actually be pretty toxic. And so we have what we call the 60-60 rule. And this is coming out of the survey and the work that has been done by audiologists and also by sound specialists. And so the first 60 tells us how we should be limiting our sound intensity or the volume. For the instruments that they studied, around the 60% level on the volume dial, around the 60% level, there seemed to be, for the most part, some sweet spot where we still hear plenty, believe you me, but where at least we are not in immediate danger for hearing loss. So 60%, that's loudness. Then we are listening, we are also limiting the exposure. We are listening for about 60 minutes or an hour at a time, and then we are taking those earbuds out and we're giving those ears and that brain a well-deserved rest, because the ears, like anything else on the body, cannot be in use 24/7 and being abused. So we have to give them a rest like we give a rest to everything else. And if you like to go to concerts, and some people like to go and live concerts and stuff, then investigate musicians' earplugs, or also called high fidelity earplugs. They take everything down, all frequencies, they do not clip frequencies, you hear everything, but at a lower level. Because remember, Mother Nature doesn't care whether you go and listen to Beethoven and Mozart, or whether you're listening to Twisted Sister and the Foo Birds. It does not matter. Mother Nature cares about how much pressure there is. And so, hearing is a precious sense, and this is why I'm coming to the Rotary clubs in order to help me spread the word on this silent epidemic. It doesn't have to be this way. So learn about hearing loss and pay forward what you learned. And if you don't want to do that, then pay forward what you learned here today. It's only the beginning, but it is a good start. Or pay my name forward. Hey, now with Zoom, that is actually really an opportunity for me. I have talked to people across the United States and way into Canada about all sorts of things that I cannot travel everywhere. And so this is an opportunity for me, connect me with another Rotary Club or with another social group. Here in Minneapolis, I have been connected to social groups that by Rotarians that I did not even know existed, you know? And so I learn from that and people learn, and so we all learn together. However, you know, if you want, also if you know about some kind of a person in the industry who wants to do something about this, you know, pay my name forward. I am ready to go. So anyway, when we, however, do all of this, we also have to start looking at ourselves. Are we maybe even contributing involuntarily to this epidemic? Like, for instance, for the last holidays, did we bring home again the insanely loud noisy toys for the children, or these games that are so insanely loud, or even the amplifier that is pumping out I don't know how much, and where we are turning up way to the last notch so that we have the walls shaking and we feel the music. So we have to kind of get into our own heads and sort of see what we are actually doing that could be contributing of this. And so that takes introspection, and of course the Rotarians are doing that so well. And then they are taking that all out into their families, of course, and then also into their communities, still electronically right now, but hopefully soon again in person. And why would they be doing that? Well, simply because this all comes under the mantra of service above self, because this is what we are doing, right? Today, we want to keep people of all ages hearing better and longer. And so I kind of consider that every single bit of awareness that we can have, every single bit of noise management that we can do, I consider that an investment. And it is an investment for a change in quality of life. In quality of life for now and for the future, so that indeed we will be hearing so much better and so much longer, and so that the day never ever comes for any one of us when the music just simply dies. And so that is what I got for you. So I give you actually my email address. I mentioned before we even got on, you know, with the meeting, there are some Rotarians that have emailed me because all of a sudden after the meeting they had a question or whatever. I am totally reachable. I'm not hiding behind the bushes. So you can email to me, and also go on my website. I write about, I'm working on a blog now. I put blogs up about hearing loss and all sorts of things, COVID, heart disease, as a tiring, you know, hearing fatigue, listening fatigue that can really get people down. So, you know, check out my website. I'm there.
Thank you, Monique. You know, it's interesting, actually. I didn't know your story until I got the email from your husband on wanting to speak. And I personally am actually have a very similar story. While I listened to my fair share of Twisted Sister as a teenager, it was actually from an explosion that I lost hearing in my right ear. And people have a really hard time understanding what the situation is. It's not, just like you said, it's not so much losing the hearing as it is the constant ringing and the fuzzy sound of like the broken speaker that disrupts everything else that you hear. Even out of the good ear on one side, you just cannot hear in ambient noise at all with my type of hearing loss. So it's so cool to hear your story and to have somebody to identify with a little bit.
Well, you know, we hear in stereo, and you know, that makes maybe sense to people. And so the right ear, the left ear, everything has to be working together to be integrated in the brain. And then we hear the sound actually sort of in the middle of the head, you know, because we have that stereo thing going on. When all of a sudden you have lopsided hearing, as I call it, you know, you hear, and the bigger the difference becomes, the worse it becomes. And so that's why, you know, we have to be bringing that up, because when it gets really lopsided, I tell you one thing, that's when we're also starting to engage, you know, the balance structures that were on top of that inner ear. you know, because all of a sudden people with hearing loss are actually much more at fall risk. And that becomes also a problem in the industry. When you have people with lopsided hearing, because the brain is getting the wrong message of where you're positioned as in space, should we say. And then also we find out, right, that there is a big difference between hearing. I hear noise. I hear at this point in time plenty of noise because I did regain some hearing, but it is hearing and understanding. You know, that it was two big differences here. And that's people say, I can't hear in the loud restaurant. Oh yeah, they hear plenty. They are bothered by it. They want to leave there, but they can't understand a word anybody is saying. And that's where the problem is. That's where you run into trouble at work. That's where I was running into trouble at my work. You know, what did they just tell me? Was the patient allergic to Lasix or to latex? You know, I mean, that makes a big difference. You can kill somebody that way. And so anyway, this is when it becomes dangerous. But yeah, and the right ear, my right ear it has lost because I overstress it, because I do everything on that right ear. All the telephone call, everything is on that right ear. And so now that one is starting to lose. And as I'm sitting here talking to you, I'm aging. Yeah, that's not working in our favor either, right? And so everything contributes, and all of a sudden you have that hearing, understanding, and it is phenomenally fatiguing and tiring. That's actually called listening fatigue. Got a blog on that, and all of those types of things. Yeah, all of a sudden life changes.
We do have a few questions from the group. Jason says, and you addressed this to some degree already, but Jason asks, any data research showing increase of kids or adults hearing loss increasing since earbuds or AirPods have become more used?
Yeah, the situation with the noise-induced hearing loss, particularly in young children and in all of us, but with the kids, that really rang a bell, because children, you know, they still have a life to live. They have to go and they have to get educated. They have to get out there in the workplace and all of those things. And that was in the 80s, early 90s. That's when they found out that they're all of a sudden, when they tested, they did retesting in certain communities, that all of a sudden they had like a phenomenal increase in younger people who had hearing loss. And I tell you, I don't have a crystal ball, but that is sort of in coordination with the advent of the Walkman. Remember that one where you had the little tapes, and now all of a sudden you didn't have to haul the loudspeaker around anymore to go to the beach like we used to do in the olden days, right? And that was uncomfortable, it was heavy, and who wanted to take responsibility for it? Well, you better believe it. And so now we are strapping that all around our arm, and we are going out there and we are turning it up good and loud. But then we still had the little ear sets, and there was sort of dissipation, and it was not immediately being blasted like with the earbuds into the ear, just, I mean, directly against that eardrum. And that is such a high stimulation that drum continues to vibrate, and it never can relax and reset itself. And so this is why these earbuds become so dangerous. We have to limit the sound volume and the sound exposure, because that has become so toxic. And so it started, and the red flag came up, and like I said, Johns Hopkins has been looking into this. They found out, and it is worldwide, the World Health Organization, the WHO, had out there a little while ago, that worldwide there are, I don't know how many million of young people that are like teen to 20s maybe, that are in danger of having really life quality issues because of this.
We did have one request. Could you put the sound app slide back up again? The one that details the sound apps.
Okay, we have to go back into the screen. And then we're just a second here. We're moving there. Yeah, that is the apps. They are now very popular, but like I said, you have to kind of. Oh, that's the wrong. Where are we here? Okay. Okay. We have to kind of get that all together. You're coming up. Nope, here it is. So the sound meter app. So for the iPhones, there is one NIOSH, the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health, and they have an app out there, and that is also used in the industry. And that seems to be, many people have told me that that is very that is actually very accurate. There is also Decibel X for iPhone, and there are all sorts of them out there. And so what you have to do is you have to read on, like dear Abby used to tell us, until we get to the point, which phones is this compatible with? I have a Droid, and so there is even a guy who has a whole website, the Droid guy, and then you have to go and you have to search for the sound meter apps for the Droid, and he has all sorts of apps out there. He tells you even the differences about them, what is good about them, what is bad about them. But we have to, and dB meter, I think, is the one that I have.
One word of caution, when you go into it, the basic application is free, but they're going to immediately try to get you into paying so much a month.
Yeah.
And so they always try to upgrade you. And so you'll constantly get that, but you don't need to upgrade. That's for industrial and sound engineers and things like that. So stay with the free one, and cancel if it says, and you'll be able to hear it. And they're actually pretty accurate. And the big thing is that you walk into a place, as Monique said, and it seems loud, but the brain immediately tries to compensate. But unfortunately, the ears are still getting damaged. And the other thing that Monique mentioned is if it's, as we went to a party a few years ago before COVID, Christmas party, and it was about 88 decibels in there. But to talk to anyone, you had to yell at about 95, which is not only bad for your voice, as Monique said, but you're yelling at 95 decibels or louder.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the ambient noise is a killer, because you have to yell over it. And so now there are ENT doctors out there, the ear, nose, and throat, to tell me that they are finding, actually from all the yelling that we actually do, that they are finding people who have who have actually polyps on their vocal cords. And also there is the what I call the millennial speak, people who talk like this, they have their sort of a throaty talk. That is also kind of damaging, apparently, to the younger people. Do that a lot, damaging to the vocal cord. So anyway, so everything works together. The body is a big machine, and all parts work together.
That's right. Right. Devin did also, for those of you who are interested, Devin added those iPhone apps into the chat box. So you can take a screenshot of that or of the slide as well, just for future reference. Let's see, Jay Evans mentions that it's not just music, it's not just, ambient noise party type situations, but he thinks that he may have lost his hearing due to hunting without ear protection. So those explosions, the gunfire. And then Sana Robinson says, Monique, where are you from originally? Your accent sounds like maybe Austria, Germany, Belgium. Very good program. Thank you for your service to Rotarians.
I always say, well, I'm from Minneapolis. No, I'm originally from Luxembourg in Europe. So with Belgium, you were extremely close. That's our neighbor, the Benelux country, Belgium, the Netherlands, and Luxembourg, the original, core economic group at the beginning of the European Union.
That's right.
Small country, the size of Rhode Island. Google Luxembourg.
Yeah. A world banking powerhouse. Let's see. I think that's all of our questions. I'm just going one more time through here to make sure we've addressed all the questions. Anybody have any that you want to add just verbally that you haven't had a chance to put in the chat box? We have a couple more minutes for one more question. All right. I think we've got them all. Well, Monique, thank you so much for joining us from Minneapolis. This Zoom format is not perfect. It's not perfect for those of us who do have some hearing loss because we do have all that cross chatter, but it does allow us to have speakers from Minneapolis join us here in Nashville. So we appreciate you in your long distance speaking. The other announcement I want to make sure that we're all aware of, I'm going to say it till we're blue in the face here, but again, one more Zoom meeting next Friday, Zoom only. Do not show up at Spring Hill Suites, but March 12th, 2 weeks away, is when we will start our hybrid a few people, limited attendance, socially distant, masked, boxed lunches, all that kind of stuff. 2 weeks from today, Spring Hill Suites. And then for the remainder of March, we'll do that hybrid format, see how it goes. And we may stick with that through the month of April as well, it looks like. So with that, if there is no other business for the good of the club, pause just in case. Okay, well, then we are adjourned. So stay safe, stay healthy, and keep serving. You're adjourned.